welcome to our next episode of That Kind of Podcast. I'm Dia Kappelman.
I am Jenny Olsen-Payton.
And you are going to be so proud of me today. I am expanding my horizons to a truly unsolved.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Yes.
boys and girls, this is a first.
It is. And it's not even like the one I did before that was kind of unsolved,
Yeah.
but was it? This is pretty...
Unsolved?
Yeah, yeah, we'll get into it.
Okay.
I'm going to do the Circleville Letter Writer.
Okay. This is like The Watcher. Do we think The Watcher is really the Circleville letter writer?
Oh, now that could be interesting. Maybe The Watcher moved from Circleville in the 70s to...
Yeah.
No, actually he was all over Columbus even into the 90s.
Okay.
So then he could have gone up north and become The Watcher. Maybe we should do a whole collection of unsolved letter writings and then tracked it and seen.
We'll have like a big board.
Yes.
So the guys won't mind if we put a big board up here and...
No, we'll have the red lines and everything.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, that'll be the next thing we tackle in our spare time.
All right. Yeah, no kidding.
Okay, so we are going to go to Circleville, Ohio in 1977.
Okay.
Where Mary Gillespie was a high school bus driver, and she received a letter in the mail from an anonymous sender accusing her of having an affair with the married school superintendent, Gordon Massey.
Okay.
And the letter writer claimed he was watching her and told her to stop. Mary chalked it up to a prank, although not a nice one, and threw the letter away.
So was she having an affair?
Maybe. Yeah.
They were just real good friends.
Yeah, there's some. They claimed that they weren't.
Okay.
However, we'll get a little bit into that.
Okay.
So then, about a week later, either 6 days or 8 days, depending on the source, she received another letter in the mail. Same block handwriting. It's very distinctive. And this one got a little more graphic, saying that if she didn't stop it, the letter writer would put a bullet in her daughter's head.
Oh, that escalated quickly.
Very quickly. And so she showed her husband, Ron, and then Ron started getting letters as well. Then Gordon started getting a letter saying, if you don't admit and stop what you're doing, I'm going to tell the board. But then 24 hours later, the letter writer sent a letter to the board. So there's some, like, you didn't even really give him a chance. Like, it, boom, boom. Anyway.
He's like, we're really escalating quickly.
Yes. Yeah, it went from 0 to 100. The letter writer did say he would kill Ron if Ron didn't put a stop to it. Another one stated, you have had 2 weeks and done nothing. Make her admit the truth. If not, I will broadcast it on CBs. I mean, that tells you the times right there, CBs.
Breaker 19.
Yes.
We got a cow in the pokey.
Posters, signs, and billboards until the truth comes out.
Wow, somebody is really invested. I mean, talk about a Karen.
Yeah. This is intense. I bet, I don't know if there were HOAs around then, but if there weren't, this would be the president of the HOA.
Yes.
That should have been their first stop to...
Yeah. Excuse me, do you have a bone to pick with Mary Gillespie?
Yes. So then, because nothing stopped or started, or people were just kind of trying to figure out what is even going on, signs did start popping up everywhere, especially along Mary's route. So,
could you imagine driving the school bus and...
Yes.
Kids, cover your eyes!
Well, that's exactly it. And they would get kind of graphic. So Ron would actually, Mary's husband, would wake up early in the mornings to go and pick up all the signs that he could find so that their daughter especially wouldn't be able to see them.
Well, yeah.
So Mary and Ron asked Ron's sister Karen and her husband Paul for help. Okay. So they decided that the letter writer was probably David Longberry. He was a fellow bus driver that had come on to Mary, and she rejected him, and he did not take it well at all. So they thought it was just revenge.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, if the person you're going after rebukes you, is that a word?
And happens to be married while they do that?
There's a lot of fish in the sea. It's time to move on.
Yes. And you can't get upset when somebody who is married turns you down. Anyway, so Paul wrote a letter to David, basically stating, we know who you are, now stop. And for the next few weeks, the letter stopped.
We know you are, stop, or I'm going to put a bullet in somebody's brain and put posters and, I mean, like,
yeah.
Is it?
It went that quickly just over the span of a few weeks.
Alrighty then.
So then, on August 19th, 1977, Mary was out of town with her sister in Florida, and Ron received a phone call and became very upset.
Okay.
He told his kids he was going to confront the letter writer, so they assumed that's who had been on the phone.
Okay.
But just a few hours later, he was found dead in his truck from crashing into a tree.
Okay.
He had taken his gun with him, but the gun did have one spent shell casing in there. So he did shoot it at one point, but they don't know. There was no bullet found, so they don't know.
Right.
He could have shot him at any point.
Yeah.
But that is a point in there that a lot of people get caught up on. What does that mean?
Right.
The police claimed that it was drunk driving, but his friends and family say that he rarely drank. He hadn't been drinking all day. It was less than 10 miles from his house, so he knew that road very well.
Right.
And it was at night, but it was a clear night. It was dry, so it shouldn't have been treacherous conditions.
Right.
But then soon after that, residents in Circleville, it seemed randomly, started receiving letters that Sheriff Dwight Radcliffe was involved in a cover-up about Ron's death.
Oh, for the love of God.
Because originally the sheriff had thought foul play, because everything just seemed kind of weird around it. But he changed his mind when the other person involved passed a polygraph. And when they did an autopsy, Ron's BAC was 0.16. So the sheriff changed his mind back to drunk driving.
Okay.
However, we don't know anything about this other person involved, including who their name was.
Oh, for the love.
So you could kind of look at it and wonder if the letter writer had a point, because you would have to be, that's over double the legal limit.
Yeah.
So you would have to be pretty trashed in order to be driving. And Ron's own kids said that they didn't smell alcohol, he didn't seem drunk. So it was very...
Anything, yeah.
So that's a little funky.
Yeah.
And then after a while, the letters just stopped.
Yeah.
6 years later, in February of 1983, they started again.
Somebody got bored and started again.
Yes. And once again, Mary and Gordon were at the center of the letter writing campaign. However, they had begun dating. Gordon had divorced his wife.
Okay.
And of course, Mary was widowed. And they claimed that the letters are what had brought them together.
Okay.
So again, it's kind of maybe. So to answer your question, they denied any affair beforehand.
Right.
However,
you never know.
You never know. And this time the letters got even more.
What if it was Mary or Gordon that were sending the letters?
We'll discuss that. The letters did get a little more brash.
Okay.
They were claiming that Gordon had raped Mary's 12-year-old daughter.
Oh, for the love.
And that has been pretty much ruled out altogether. Okay. And then signs started appearing again, especially along Mary's bus route. So it was someone who knew what her bus route was in order to put them there. So then one day Mary got out to take down one of the signs and noticed this box contraption on the back of it. And when she opened up the box, there was a gun in there. She took it to police. Police realized that it had been a crudely constructed booby trap that was supposed to, whoever tore the sign down, it was supposed to shoot the person.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. However, it was a 22. However, because it didn't work correctly, she was saved, thankfully. But yeah, I mean, that's a pretty intense.
For the love of God.
Yeah. The serial number had been roughly filed off, but not good enough that the police were able to track down its owner. Its owner said, yeah, that used to be my gun, but I sold it to my boss. Police said, great, who's your boss? His boss was Paul Freshour. Ron's, the man who passed away, Ron's sister's now ex-husband.
Oh, for the love.
They had also gotten divorced in this time. So, when questioned, Paul had said that he did have that gun, but it had been stolen. He just never reported it.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Apparently, no one knew that he had this gun either. He never said that he had told anyone he had it, but someone had broken into his home and stolen the gun that nobody knew he had and found basically his secret gun in his secret hiding place in his garage. And that's all they had stolen. Seems a little sketchy.
Yeah, just a bit.
And so police brought him in, asked him to give handwriting samples to compare with the letter writer, and they matched. However, police did dictate the letters to him, which is what you're supposed to do, procedure-wise. But before they dictated them, they handed the letters to him or let him see them and copy off of those. So that is going to skew your sample if you're copying off.
Already need a nap.
And there's nothing in this case that you're like, yes, that is concrete evidence. It was very, after he copied them all, then they started dictating to him, but he had already seen the samples and knew what it was supposed to look like. They did end up arresting him, and he was tried for the attempted murder of Mary Gillespie. Nothing was ever charged as far as the actual letters themselves.
Okay.
A handwriting expert testified that he did believe Paul was the writer. Paul did fail a polygraph.
Okay.
But polygraphs are kind of meh.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, if I was ever in that situation, I don't think I would agree to one because they're not reliable. Yeah.
Well, and you probably did it.
I probably did. No, Jenny, I'm not going to admit that.
Wink, wink. She didn't do it.
He had also just happened to take the day off from work on the day that the booby trap was set, but he also had an alibi for most of the day as well. They had work being done on the house, and so he was there with a lot of workers. So it did make sense why he would have that day off.
Okay.
So it's pretty circumstantial. There was nothing concrete in any sort of way about any of it.
If it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck.
But was it? He just happened to take a day off.
That would be my luck.
Yes.
Like the one thing I'd be like, I was home in bed all day. Do you have an alibi? No.
TikTok. I can tell you about all the TikTok trends for today because that's about all they last on TikTok.
Yeah. Oh gosh.
Paul's daughter did state that she saw writings like that all over the house, but they couldn't prove that she did or didn't.
Okay.
Paul's ex-wife, the one that had been married, Karen, Ron's sister.
Her name was Karen?
Her name was Karen.
Okay.
She testified that she had found writing like that in their toilet. Like somebody had tried to tear it up and flush it down.
Like in picturing him with the toilet bowl cleaner.
Well, yeah. She said that she found those letters, but she didn't turn them into police. Which, my whole thing is, you were one of the few people that Mary and Ron had come to you about. And I guess you could say maybe she was trying to protect her husband, but then they got divorced, so why would you be trying to protect him? I don't know, the whole thing is really weird, but it's especially weird she never reported it to police and was like, oh yeah, one day I just happened to find these. So with all of that though, a jury looked at him and said, yeah, he definitely did this. They put him in prison, he was found guilty, but the letters kept coming. And kept being postmarked. The entire time they've been postmarked from Columbus, Ohio, about 30 minutes from Circleville.
Okay.
So hundreds of letters came. Well, hundreds were before, hundreds of letters came after Paul was in prison. And they even put Paul in solitary confinement and would pat him down and cut off he couldn't talk to anyone, he couldn't write any letters, he had no access to pen or paper, and the letters kept coming. Which I understand that, but also if they're being postmarked outside of the jail, then obviously
somebody other than him is doing it.
Yeah, patting him down is not going to help.
Where's the postmark? Ohio State Jail. Okay. I wonder who it was.
We solved that one real quick. But even Paul received a letter stating, now when are you going to believe you aren't going to get out of there? I told you 2 years ago. When we set them up, they stay up. Some of the letters that were still being sent out to the residents of Circleville too. It was just to everyone.
Wow.
But some of them accused the prosecutor of murdering a pregnant woman. And then later, it was discovered that the prosecutor did have an affair with her, and he was the father of her unborn son, though he was cleared of any wrongdoing with her death. But still,
wow.
The writer also sent out that the medical examiner who had performed Ron's autopsy was a pedophile. And in 1993, he was charged with 12 counts of sex crimes, with some involving a minor, indecent exposure, and some others.
Well, that's frightening.
So it seems like there's kind of...
Maybe he's right.
Enough? Yeah, he might not be completely 100% correct, but the letter is pretty close.
Yeah.
And it's also interesting that the medical examiner was involved in something and the prosecutor was involved in something. Mm-hmm. So again, that's...
Yeah.
I don't know, you could get really... circle around a rabbit hole on this. So then in 1994, after 10 years, Paul was released on parole, and he claimed his innocence the entire time. He actually asked the FBI to look into the letter case because his assumption was if he can prove somebody else wrote the letters, he can prove somebody else set up the booby trap.
Yeah.
The FBI never responded to it. However, Unsolved Mysteries picked up the case and interviewed Paul, who stated that he wanted someone, even on this national platform, he was saying, I want someone to look into this. Someone please look into this. Karen, the ex-wife, was furious that the show was in town, that they were recording. She refused to be a part of it. She was upset that Paul was giving interviews about it. She would take pictures of everybody going in and out for interviews as well. Kind of weird.
Yeah.
And then the show itself received a letter from the Circleville writer. But after that, all letters stopped.
Really?
And that's it. That's the end of the case. So, the different theories about who was involved in it is, of course, Paul himself.
Yeah.
They did find his fingerprints on about a dozen of the letters postmarked while he was in jail.
Right.
Also, it was his mysteriously stolen gun that was in the booby trap.
Right.
However, would he really use a gun, his own gun, to put in a booby trap?
Yeah.
But it did come out that before the booby trap, more people did know about the gun. And Paul had talked about it. So it wasn't as secretive as originally police had thought about it. And the reason he was so secretive to police about it was because Paul had said he thought his son Mark had stolen the gun, and so he was trying to protect his son Mark.
Okay.
So that's why the story to police seemed really clunky, essentially. And Mark did have some issues off and on, and unfortunately in 2002 he shot himself. And many people believed it was because of his guilt, with what was going on.
Well, that would explain why Paul's, if it was Mark and the paper was from Mark's house, or from, so it would make sense that Paul's fingerprints would be on it.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And Mark was still alive while the letters kept going.
Yeah.
So that's an option. Of course, Mary Gillespie and Gordon Massey were two that they had thought about too, but they had nothing to gain from any of this, including just starting out revealing an affair that they were having.
Right.
Because Gordon could have lost his job with it. So it seems like...
excessive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
David Longberry, the other bus driver, that's who Mary had originally thought and kind of leaned towards being the letter writer. And in 1999, he was on the run for raping an 11-year-old girl, and he eventually committed suicide while he was on the run. So, I mean, he did have some issues.
Yeah,
and
just a few.
He still would have been alive.
Yeah.
During that. William Massey is Gordon Massey's son.
Okay.
So they think maybe he could have done it because he was upset about his dad having an affair with Mary, or at least a perceived affair at the beginning. Some of the letters were signed with a W. Okay. Leading them to some people to believe that William would make sense. Yeah. However, again, you're leaving a pretty big trail if you're signing your own initial to it. But I don't know. There have been dumber criminals, so maybe.
Exactly right.
Karen Freshour, so Paul's ex-wife.
Okay.
Their divorce was very contentious. They did not get along. She was known to be very vindictive and have a lot of issues with what happened between them.
It takes a certain amount of je ne sais quoi, I would say, for me to be able to pull off that many letters. At some point, you need to
I think there were almost 1,000 letters.
Holy cow. Yeah.
So it could have been, and if you look into the details between them, she knew about his gun. She could have framed him with his own gun. Yeah. Like you said, if it was paper that had been at his house, then his fingerprints would probably be at the paper. Right. On the paper. She would know the details about his life and what was going on there. Is that a hornet?
I don't know.
Around?
I don't think it's a hornet, but no, it looks like it's a big something.
Okay. Be cool, be cool.
Dia just takes off running, screaming.
And I don't mind them, I just don't like them in my space. Yeah. He can stay over there, I just don't want
He's not a hornet. I think he's some kind of bug.
Okay.
I mean, he is some kind of bug. I know he is some kind of bug.
It's not a flying rhinoceros, I can tell you that right now. You can rule out mammal. Okay.
Okay.
So yeah, there's a lot, and Karen's whole story of, I found these letters in the toilet. He was obviously trying to flush them. Does sound a little suspicious. Yeah. But even if it wasn't her writing the letters, she also could have just been doing that to get back at her ex-husband, being like, oh yeah, it was totally him. I found letters.
Yeah, absolutely.
That I never told anyone about. So then there's El Camino Man.
Sounds like a Quentin Tarantino.
Oh, it does. El Camino Man, a fellow bus driver of Mary's had seen a man next to an El Camino about 20 minutes
before. Can we just pause and think about what an epic car an El Camino was?
I know there's supposed to be something special. I don't get them.
My dad had one. So that was like when I was a kiddo. That was my dad's car. My dad had one. So I have totally fond memories of.
Okay.
And it was, I remember, so again, I was a little creative child that saw like darkness everywhere she turned. And on. Still do. So it was a black El Camino. And then inside it had wood grain. And like, so the dash had wood grain on it. So I remember being a kiddo and like trying to like see patterns and eyes in the wood grain. So yeah, I have fond memories. And then I remember him pulling in the driveway one day and the whole front end had been like, he'd gotten in a wreck and he was fine, but the El Camino soon went away. So I love El Caminos. Okay, go on.
I'm so sorry.
Okay. And not to be confused with the Ford's El Ranchero.
Oh. I
know.
No, I know there's supposed to be something special. And wood grain. And even cars today, our luxurious cars have wood grain. I think it's the dumbest thing ever. I don't get wood grain.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand.
All right.
Okay, back to it. Sorry, we had to epically
reminisce a little bit.
Yes. Okay, go ahead.
Go back into Jenny's childhood.
This was not my dad, by the way.
This was not. Did your dad have sandy hair?
Kind of. It's my color. It was my color.
Okay, but no.
Yeah, no. Maybe a little lighter. He had the white man's afro.
In the 70s?
Yeah.
Yeah, late 70s. Okay.
Yeah.
So, bus driver saw a man with sandy hair standing next to an El Camino.
Okay.
In the spot where the booby trap sign had been placed. The sign wasn't there, but the man was. And this was about 20 minutes before Mary came through and took down the sign.
Okay.
So it's thought that he probably had something to do with it. A man that Karen Freshour was dating at the time had sandy hair.
And an El Camino?
Her brother had an El Camino. Paul, who went to jail for this, had no El Camino and had dark hair. So he doesn't match the description at all. So then another theory is that is actually several writers. Like one person started it and other people saw an opportunity to kind of just air their grievances out, which would kind of make sense, but also doesn't explain why it stopped all of a sudden. Because if there's several people doing it, then I think my thought would be it'd probably keep going for a while, or it wouldn't just collectively die. Yeah. But it did. So according to FBI profiler Mary Ellen O'Toole, she studied the Unabomber, she studied the Green River Killer. She's very high profile.
Okay.
She said that Ryder would seem very normal and people wouldn't suspect that person. She does believe that there is only one Ryder. She also believes that there is a, quote, good possibility it's female. Because the writer tries so hard to establish that they are a male that she thinks that
it makes sense.
You're protesting too much. The writer did talk about my girlfriend and made several claims like that, so she thinks it's just too much. She also stated the person was not highly educated because of the sentence structure, but Paul had a master's degree.
Interesting.
She also claims that this person would be a bully in their everyday life. Maybe someone who would wait outside a place where people are getting interviewed and take pictures of them, perhaps. But anyway, she said they would...
Maybe.
They would be a bully in their everyday life. However, Paul was essentially described by everyone as a big teddy bear.
Okay.
However, forensic document expert Beverly East conducted an analysis of the letter writer versus Paul's known handwriting in previous letters that he had sent to people.
Okay.
And she concluded it was the same writing. He was the letter writer, and she would swear on it in court.
You know, if you're married long enough, you can usually get your spouse's handwriting down pretty good.
That's a good point. That's a very valid point. So, anyway, that's the...
Interesting. So it's unsolved.
It's unsolved, and you have highly respected people in their fields
that don't know.
agreeing. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Obviously, I kind of lean towards, I think a lot of the ex-wife would kind of make sense.
Yeah, me too.
Especially with knowing some of her background as far as how she lived her life normally.
Yeah.
But yeah, even the letter writer, that doesn't make sense. But even just what happened with Ron.
Yeah.
There's no resolution to that, and how that fits in. If it was just an accident, if he had really been drinking, there was no other signs of foul play involving his car. He didn't have any other signs like he had been physically assaulted in any way, gun, knife, hit, anything.
Yeah.
So it's not like somebody even tried to stage it.
Right.
What happened?
Wow.
So was he just, it just happened to be that
coincidence
way?
Or
coincidence? Was somebody really going to admit to him what was going on or explain to him what was going on, and it just so happened that he went off the road? Or did somebody set it up somehow?
Yeah.
Could have put something in the road, maybe?
Yeah. Interesting.
But then how did they get his BAC? But then you're back to the medical examiner.
Mm-hmm.
Had some issues, so maybe there was a cover-up involved. So, yes.
It's an interesting one.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting one.
That's the story of the Circleville Letter Writer.
Very good. I like that one.
Okay.
All right.
There you go.
So we'll be back next week with... I decided to do something funny because my week has been kind of crazy, so I needed something that was much lighter and much funnier.
So funny true crime.
Funny true crime.
All right, let's do it.
Sounds good.
We'll see you guys next week.
Bye.